Mas eu fiz ela em português pela primeira vez. So, good morning everyone. Before we start, I'd like to make an announcement. So the Welcome and System Department, and you were part of it, right? So help me if I misspoke. So we at the Welcome and System Department is offering assistance if anyone that would like to have a gospel at home, and you're not 100% sure how to do it or how to conduct it, the department can guide you with some structure or help you to initiate this important practice at home. Yeah. And we have an email if you want to send an email, or you can talk to one of the members, which is Sonia, Carol, Vitor, Eric, yeah, Anna as well. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with our harmonizing text. It's from The Way, the Truth, and the Life from Francisco Cândido Xavier by the Spirit Emmanuel. So the text is number 179 and is the new commandment. I give you a new commandment: love one another as I have loved you. Jesus, John chapter 13, verses 34. An inattentive reading of the text would lead the reader to see the words of the Master as being identical to his teaching concerning the Golden Rule. However, there's a big difference. Love your neighbor as yourself is different than love one another as I have loved you. The former entails a duty, and in fulfilling it, people should not expect the understanding of others. The disciple will love his or her neighbor as himself or herself. Jesus, however, broadens the formula to create a new commandment for the Christian community. The Master refers to this during his final intimate gathering with his dear friends. The commandment, love one another as I have loved you, assures a system of true solidarity among disciples. It warrants fraternal trust and the certainty of mutual understanding. In their everyday relationships, Christians are to love their neighbor as themselves, understanding, however, that in the home of their faith, they can count on brothers and sisters who actively support one another. This is the new commandment that has established true closeness among those who have given their lives to Christ. It means that in their area of toil, where there are those who sacrifice themselves and those who appreciate the sacrifice, those who love and those who feel loved, those who do the good and those who know how to be thankful for it. In any circle of the gospel where their characteristics do not mark the way Christians relate to one another, the implications of the good news may have reached inquirers' minds, but they have not gained entrance to the sanctuary of their hearts. So let's pray. So let's raise our thoughts, our heart to our Father God, to our Master Jesus. And first, be thankful, be grateful for one more opportunity that we have here in the Sunday morning to learn a little bit more about Jesus and God's teachings, to try and take the most advantage of all the words and all the information that will be passed, that we can use to the best that we can. Be grateful for this second home that we have. Be thankful for the love, for the light that this home can shine, not only in this neighborhood, but within the city, this province, and this country. And let's pray and ask for the spirituality, that we can have a good meeting, that we can talk, exchange information, and use to our moral progress. So be it. Esqueci de conectar. Just a second. How do I cannot do it. I don't see that here.
Enable.
Aí é só mudo pro enable ali.
All right. Got it. Thank you for technical assistance. Hi. All right, so today we're going to talk about forgiveness and how have all we been practicing this important virtue. And the reference that I use to make this talk was actually, I added one more, but mainly three. First, Free Yourself by Forgiving, or in Portuguese, Liberte-se pelo Perdão, from Alberto Almeida, YouTube channel called Nova Consciência. Psychology with Forgiveness, ou Psicologia com Perdão, from Divaldo Franco, Fab TV, and an invitation to forgiveness, convite ao perdão, from Lacordaire Abraham Fayad, from the FAMT play. And also I added another one, which I would like to establish a comparison of self-forgiveness with Saul, or Paul of Tarsus, that Rosandro did a while ago in a lecture that he did. So, the objective for today is try to increase the knowledge to find some answers of what does it mean to forgive, and what are the benefits if we decide to forgive, including another one, our neighbor, and even more important, ourselves. How do I react to the mistakes that I make? And also, how do I react when an offense is directed at me? So the third question is talking about us, and the fourth question talking about the other people. So before I go and talk about some of the concepts, I would like to tell a little bit of a story that Divaldo talked about in his, I think it's a web series from Fab TV, where he mentions about this war called the Armenian War or the Armenian Genocide, which I was not aware at the beginning. This war happened throughout the World War I and lasted even after that. The war was between Turkey and Armenia. So the following describes a situation where a Turkish soldier invades a village, a town, and abruptly enter a house where there was a family, parents, mother and father, and two girls. So with his spade, that soldier killed the parents in front of two kids. One of the kids, one of the daughters, the younger one, the soldier with the whole army, took her and killed her in an open space to her death. The second one was a little bit older, and that second one was taken, kidnapped, and made as a sexual slave. So that older daughter was about 15 years old. So after kidnapping, so that young older daughter stayed with the soldier for about 2 years. So when she completed about 17, 18 years old, she was able to escape. And she moved back to Turkey. When she moved back to Turkey, she decided to become a nurse. And she studied and became an example of what a good nurse could look like. Did very well, very dedicated. At a certain point, while working in a hospital, the director of the hospital came to her, and before came to her, a guy came to the hospital with a very serious condition, a health condition, where the chances of that man to live was like low to nothing. So he had a skin problem where that skin would rotten and fall apart. The situation was so bad for that man that it would be hard for someone to take care of. And he compares that not even a daughter might be able to take care of that man. But the director of the hospital came to that nurse and asked her if she would be willing to take care of that man. And she said yes. And she did an impeccable job. She devoted 100, or even if there's more than 100% of her time, even sometimes debilitating, like losing weight, just to be dedicated to that man. And that man recovered. And that man came to the director of the hospital and asked, just being thankful and being grateful for everything or all the work that the hospital had done to him. And he said, you don't have to thank me, you have to thank that nurse. So he went and to talk to that nurse and be thankful and start talking to her. And as he was talking to her, he noticed that she had an Armenian accent. She spoke Turkish, but with an Armenian accent. And he said, oh, I noticed you have this Armenian accent, and I have been in Armenia before. And she started talking, yes, you sure had been. And you entered my house, and you killed my parents in front of me, and you also killed my daughter, my sister. And the man was like paled, and was like astonished with that revelation. He said, and even though you took care of me, why didn't you pay back and kill me at the first opportunity that you had? And she said, because I learned with our father, with our master, that we should love everyone, and we should not kill, and we should not kill and should not damage anyone else. So that was a very a tough situation, right? A very hard scenario that someone would go through, especially, and Divaldo mentioned, in those cases where there's sexual abuse. It's a mark, it's something that lasts to a long time in the life of someone, and in that case, in that woman. But I like to take a break. We will come back to this story, but I like to now, after, to talk a little bit more about, there's some misconceptions about forgiveness. And some people, they think to forgive is to collude, or conivir in Portuguese. It's just to say, yeah, I'll just forget it and think that the action that was made against you, it's okay. That's not forgiveness. Or to forgive, a line to that is to forgive another's fault, and that should not be corrected, right? If someone did something wrong, if I just say, okay, you're good, but no correction or nothing else is done to change that course, this, again, it's not forgiveness. And this part that Divaldo shined a great light in terms of forgive is to forget the offense and just to remove from our mind. So there's a little bit of misconception. To forget is a process, right? But forget something is a psychological process. It won't happen overnight, right? It will take for us to forget. It will take a time that whatever happened, it will it will decrease. It will keep going away, but will not go away suddenly, abruptly, and like, I forgot, and that's done, right? It's part of a process. We have a memory and we have a physiology that whatever happened will be there, but that will fade out. I was trying to remember that word. But what is the meaning of forgiveness? So Alberto Almeida, he, as poetic as he is, in his lecture, he talks about forgiveness to increase our share of love each day. So Alberto mentions there is a psychologist named Tolstoy. So this psychologist, he started to doing some research and trying to identify how important is forgive in everyone's life. And as doing this research, he was able to find that if we are able to forgive, our internal conflicts will be easier to be dealt with. If we are able to forgive, we can find a more enjoying life, or a more happy and also healthy life, just practicing this virtue or this process of forgiveness. And he established a parallel, meaning this Tolstoy, he's not from Spiritism, right? It was a psychologist. Not that the Spiritism need this reinforcement and this proof, but it helps for those that maybe might not know about Spiritism. It's helped them to to that maximum from the gospel according to Spiritism. How many times do we need to forget? 70 times 7, which is every time, right? And in addition to that, I became more interested into what is happening with the world right now, with all this transition and this evolution. And Alberto Mena mentions that nowadays, with everything that's happening in our world, the demand of forgiving, the demand to forgive people is increasing more and more and more. And he gives an example. There's interpersonal relationships, which can be in our work, which can be in our family, which can be within our community, and so many others. And the state of the world requires that we have a great supply of love. And then I started with my business background. It's kind of the law of demand and supply, right? We are in such great demand of forgiveness and love that our supply needs to meet that demand. In business, we have the equilibrium. I would go, in my opinion, I think we need to exceed, right? We need to have a repository of love filled, and if we have another repository of love, to fill that one again, because we need, especially nowadays, we need that reservatory, we need that repository to love. Because when we mention about forgiveness, it's to give that love unconditionally, right? So I like that piece of the law of supply and demand. Another meaning of forgiveness: to forgive is not to return the offense to the degree that it was directed at us. And this Divaldo mentions that when somebody attacks us, we need to be in a state of balance, right? We need to do the efforts as the best that we can, that we don't enter the same energy that someone else maybe is attacking us. And even if we start, and then I expand a little bit, if we start attacking ourselves for something that may be a mistake that we do, we try to balance and not go to that mindset of guilty and of justification, right? To forgive is not to discriminate. To forget is not to retaliate as well. And in the part of retaliate, sometimes if an aggressor comes at us, it's recommended, I believe, that it's better for us to keep in silence than to give that back, right? And sometimes, even if we say we keep in silence, that silence include, even if you don't say it verbally, that silence include, sometimes like if we don't like, and I can just talk about myself, but if you don't like what other person, what someone else did to me, I don't say it, but I think about it, right? I wish she had this consequence, or I wish she or he had that consequence. So being aware of that state of mind as well. Don't say it, but if you caught yourself thinking and trying to send negative energy, try to refrain from that, which is part of forgiveness as well.
I guess it's challenging because some people think it's only a matter of having self-control in terms of action, but it's also your thoughts, right?
Yeah. It's how, if you give action to your thoughts, but also your thoughts as well. Yeah. And he mentioned like the retaliate. I want that person to pay the price, right? Yeah. So when he mentioned about to forgive is keeping peace with ourselves, because if we allow that whatever happens externally to hurt us, that will disturb our peace. So, but what about the case from the Armenian lady? If we understand now what is not, what is forgiveness, and he actually, Divaldo asks, even though it's a recorded series, he asks, what would you do if you were in the situation of that young lady that went through everything she went through and was able to forgive and, let's say, give life back to that man, right? It's tough, especially in this case. A woman that went through this situation, that the chances of that person to be like desolation, lack of self-worthiness, that person like lack of existential meaning, might go into a life of despair, right? Because it's such a tough situation that she went through. However, in this point, Lacordaire mentions about he talked about a as bad case as Divaldo, which I'm not going to mention, but he encourages us to think about the situation that happened separate from that person that committed that thing. Why he does that? Because I'm son of God, right? We all are. That person that committed, is he not?
He is as well.
He's as well, right? Does he not deserve then any mercy on anything?
He does.
He does. So if we're able, at the best that we can, to separate that person is also a son of God and deserves all the mercy. With that context, again, and reminding about through the time, that context will fade out, right? And we know that person might be a psychopath or anyone else that committed crimes like that and feel pleasure of committing crimes like that are a psychopath, and they need mercy and they need treatment and they need help. And if we know, according to Spiritism, about that law of cause and effect, whomever committed things like that will be given mercy to learn, might not be in that life, might be in a different life, to learn how not to do that again.
This is the same with the storyline of the Shack, where he was, the main character was struggling with the death of his daughter by, remember how much he struggled to forgive?
Yeah.
Yes, whoever did. But it's a beautiful lesson, especially when he's talking with the, I don't know who she was in the movie, that she was explaining that he wanted to be the judge, not leave up to God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And that, I'm going to talk a little bit about, and that's such, if we put ourselves as the judge, the
It's on
chef.
Netflix.
Yeah. If we put ourselves as the judge here in this earth and not let our God to take the actions that are appropriate, we are already in a vicious cycle, right? We are acquiring debts because you are going against what the laws are there to protect ourselves.
And it's interesting because I'm going to talk about myself, but we are as human beings.
Yeah.
When somebody does something bad to us, or I would say to me, along all these years I'm learning my lessons, right? But we want something to happen right now.
Right now,
Consequence to happen right now.
Yeah.
He did something to me. He needs to go through this right now,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. But that's why actually Renata gave me this text about love one another as I have loved you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we separate in that case the context of what happened to the person that deserves the same love that I do, I think it can help us staying away or shifting away of that anxious feeling of pay here.
And I'm not talking about like big things. I'm talking more
Simple.
like my relationship with my older son, because he
Yeah.
has some ruthless words. I said I want him to see what he's doing, things that he's saying, but it's something that he's gonna learn with the life.
Yes, yeah. And I like this quote that I would Lacordaire give. I was not able to find where Joanna said that, but I thought it was such a beautiful sentence. The medication we apply in our neighbor's wound is the medication we apply in our own soul. And I think this medication is that love, right? If we're able to apply that love to the best that we can to that person that hurt, or even to myself, it's that medication that I'm putting on myself. And then, Victor, I don't know, last time if I click here, it will be able, I would like to talk about the woman caught in adultery, but instead of showing the text, I want to show a video, but I'm not sure if I would. The video is embedded here on the video.
I'll open your talk here.
That, yeah. I think if you...
Oh,
it's YouTube, yeah. I think you have to enable. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Thank you.
You have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that you resist not evil. For whosoever shall smite thee on their right cheek,
Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses, in the law, commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? What sayest thou?
he that is without sin among you, let him first cast the stone at her. Woman, rail at those thine accusers. Hath no man condemned thee? Do I condemn you? Go. Sin no more.
Thank you. You just put it there again?
Yeah. No, it's already there.
Oh. Okay. So in this passage, the woman caught in adultery, the Pharisees put Jesus in kind of a trap, right? What do you do when we learn that everyone that committed that sin should be stoned, right? And in this case, if we go back to the concept or the meaning of the word sin, in that case it was just a mistake, right? And here Divaldo, he mentioned there's a nuance in forgiveness. Because in this case, Jesus did not condemn that woman that was caught in adultery, right? So forgiveness is, a nuance of forgiveness is that not condemn the other person for whatever mistake that the other person, and actually not condemn, because as he keeps talking about her, he mentioned, where are those that committed, that wanted to stone you, where are those? He said, they're not here anymore. And he says, so I too do not condemn you. Why do you think he said, I too do not condemn you? Because he mentioned where are those people around, and he said he included will not condemn her. But there was one person still condemning her. Who was? Herself. Exactly. Herself was condemning her for herself for the sins that she made. So like Ordell mentioned, that the self-forgiveness is the first step. And it's such an important step that those that are not able to self-forgiveness carry a weight, an unnecessary weight in our lives. And he mentioned, related to sin, if sin is just a mistake, are we going to be perfect in this world? Are we going to make mistakes? Yes. Like a child. He do an analogy of a child trying to learn how to walk. Is he or she going to fall? Yes. Are we going to fall sometimes? Many times. And what is the stance or attitude that we should put towards our falls? Condemn? Yeah, you Luis, you should know how to walk. No, right? So what is the right attitude?
Well, first, self-forgiveness.
Exactly.
And then, lesson learned.
Lesson learned. Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit more lesson learned as we move along. So, in light of the self-forgiveness, because we can only forgive, or we can only do anything to others if you're able to do ourselves, I'd like to talk about. Oh, if I had just gone there.
In the beginning of the presentation, I believe when you're talking about misunderstanding,
Yeah.
there's one phrase there that is, it's not that okay. I don't remember the word that you used, but it's not okay.
Yeah.
To do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, forgiving is not believe that it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah. I think I know you're going to go ahead. I forgot to mention about that. Yeah.
Go and sin no more.
Perfect one,
Right?
thank you.
Because then,
Exactly.
again, he was not condemning,
But not saying,
not
oh,
saying,
good.
"Okay,
Not say that was
Perfect. Yeah, it's absolutely right. Yeah, he didn't say that what she did was
fine.
right, was fine. Yeah. So, I'd like to take, so I just watched this morning a talk from Rosandro where he gave a very insightful idea comparing how Paul of Tarsus was such a great example and what could maybe Paul of Tarsus had done if he didn't decide to forgive himself. So he says that Saul showed to all of us and to the world how powerful was the gospel of Jesus for our own transformation. And the only way that he was able to transform is because he allowed himself to forgive himself. So Rosandro mentions that when the moment that Jesus, when Saul encountered Jesus in Damascus, what happens before? What was the attitude of Saul before? He chased all the Christians, right? And he actually killed a lot of Christians. So he committed several mistakes before doing that, right? And he also, that I didn't know, but I need to learn more about Saul of Tarsus. But Saul studied and was waiting for his whole life for the Messiah to appear here on earth, right? But did not recognize the Messiah was already there. But when he met Jesus in Damascus, he asked, right? Jesus asked, "Why do you chase me?" And Sandro fala, caiu a ficha. And I think at that point, Saul kind of switched the switch, right? It's like, oh, it clicked, right? That he spent his whole life searching or chasing those that who already found Jesus, right? And why he did that? Because he was in his kind of moral blindness. But the first moment that he encountered Jesus, he could have reacted as a victim, couldn't he? He could have said like, so the first moment he could have done was to act as a victim, finding that he had been behaving the wrong way, and he couldn't deserve the presence of Jesus, right? He could have said, "I don't deserve this. I've done so many mistakes in my past, and please, you stay away from me." Couldn't he have done that? Right? Because he said, I haven't noticed you, I haven't found you, and I have killed those who have found you, therefore just stay away. I don't deserve you. And in this case, he could act as a victim, right? Or he could also feeling guilt for everything that he did before in the past. Or he could also be lack of faith and say, I don't agree, or I don't want you in my life. So he could have focused on his self-guilty. That's one stance that Saul could have taken. Or another way of the victim, he would be just giving excuses, right? It's like, oh my God, Jesus, I thought that you would come in a very glorious and powerful way, right? And instead, you decided to come in a very, very simple, in a simple family. So you didn't meet my expectations, right? I was expecting something different, and you came this way.
You did a better PR.
We did a better PR, exactly.
Who's your marketing manager?
Exactly. So I kind of got confused, Jesus. Like, I didn't get you, right? But he he didn't spend any time in guilt, neither excuses. He decided to
Just move forward.
act. He decided to move forward with an uninterrupted transformation of himself. Instead, what he did, he asked, what do you want me to do? And here, Rosandro actually mentions that sometimes, and I have been noticing that the more that I read, the more that I find this behavior in our society nowadays, that we want to be neutral, or we are standing still. We don't want to move. We don't want to move. Why? Because I'm too worried with my past, what I've done. I want to understand every single cause that made me who I am today, and some of my troubles that I have, that I don't do anything forward. Or I'm just too worried of what's going to happen in the future. And as we know through our studies, what's the time that we can act?
Right now.
It's right now. And this is what Saul did. Right now, what do you want me to do? Right? And I actually go then back to question 115 of the Book of the Spirits. When we submit, when we actively submit to the mission that we have here on earth as an immortal spirit. So there's no passive. There's no let's wait for tomorrow, or I'm not going to do anything today. Because if we are neutral, we are already practicing the evil. Not cruelty, but we are not doing, if you're not doing the good, we're doing the bad. Right? And he mentions some people, when you are the victim, it's a very kind of nice position to be. Like, oh, life or the world is against me. And when that victim tries to do something, that victim wants a recipe. First, you do A. Second, you do B. Third, you do C. Right? Sometimes they go to, even in the spiritual center, and if they want the spirits to, hey, here's the recipe, go there and do everything that's said here like a process. And then he said, could you imagine if Saul would have asked Jesus, all right, give me the whole shebang, the whole thing that I will have to do. Can you imagine Jesus just, all right, first you're going to change your name because your name is not good. Then you have to go around the world creating kind of franchising of the Christianity. Then you're going to face so much. That didn't happen, right? He just said, enter the city. Because he knew that Saul would make Saul capable. And with Saul's faith, he would be able to do what he was supposed to do, but without no recipe. So I think we are encouraged not to look for a step by step. The gospel is a great roadmap for us to go, but the gospel will not dictate every single step. And we should not be prohibited to do what we are supposed to do because we don't have a guide with a step by step.
And it's interesting, the book, because in Poland, Stephen says, even before Jesus show up to Paul of Tarsus, when Stephen's almost dying, he talks to his sister, and his sister was already Christian, and he was Christian as well. But then Stephen says, don't worry about Paul, because he hasn't met Jesus yet, because as soon as he meets Jesus, he's going to be loyal the same way as he is for Moses' loss. Yeah, so this was very interesting because Stephen already knew about that.
Yeah.
He was a very loyal person, so it was just a matter of time until he meets Jesus, because he would then be the same once Jesus touched his heart. And this is what happens on the second part of the book. When he was exactly what Stephen said. So imagine, Jesus was even more aware of that.
But the key point here is that Saul forgave himself, right? because otherwise he could have taken 2 different actions.
Yeah.
And that can apply to ourselves, right? Remember when I mentioned the mistakes. If we take a stance of a victim, we'll just be standing still, right? Or if you just think that we're just guilt of everything, again, that will not help us move forward with our life. Lacordaire, in terms of the mistakes, he brings on chapter 22, rejubilate em Deus. Joanna mentions errors, the mistakes or the sins, compromised because of unfortunate attitudes that we take, are not evil, but evils that favor the experience of how not to behave in this way. Strengthen the character and sweeten the heart. Right? That's that virtue that we talk here, the apprentice feeling. Those mistakes will happen with us, will happen with anyone else, right? And we should love ourselves as our neighbor, starting with us. Moral strength provides the choice of uplifting goals and right conduct, while sweetness of heart responds for patience and compassion towards all who do not share this attitude that is personal and untransferable. We cannot outsource forgiveness. We cannot outsource our moral evolution. This is every single one of us are called, especially in this time, are called to take actions, are called to increase our supply of love, to deal with all the demands that we are having in this world, to forgive, to understand the other. First, understanding ourselves and the others as our neighbor. And for those who were here, when Alberto made a mention, some of those mistakes and some of the challenge that we have, he established an analogy like childs, right? The inner child that is a little bit hurt. Do we need just to push the child away? No, we need to recognize and accept, right? And we need to accept ourselves as we are at this point. We know that we have our evil parts and we also have our good parts. And like I don't know how to say that in English, a parábola do joio e do trigo. Joio, I don't know how to say in English, and trigo, which is, how do you say trigo? Wheat. They need to be trigo. They need to be together, right? You cannot remove everything. You remove the trigo. If you remove the joio with the wheat, everything will be pulled apart. To finalize, Lacordaire mentioned there are 2 movements. One, what we call the evident or reactive movement, when there's something that is going directed us in terms of forgiveness. Sometimes there's a pride. How dare you to do this to me? Right? Then, or he or she couldn't have done this to me. I do everything for him or her, and I still get this in return. What happens? There's hurt, there's resentment, there's anger, and to a higher degree, we start to cultivate hate. What does that lead? To this existential void that we might be building in ourselves if we decided to have this reactive and letting our egoistic feelings take care of what we are invited to transform. Because we know that ego is he's just asking for light. It's not a bad thing. It's just asking for light. How do we put light into our ego? Trying to practice our virtues, right? And he also mentions, when I do this, you couldn't do this to me, or I'm feeling anger at you, I hate you. am I really doing that to the other person?
You mean the hate?
Yeah. Do you think it's just outside? Do you think that hate is just for the other person?
I didn't understand.
So
If you
if
think like was trying to say, if you think like a wave that you are sending,
yeah,
where is the wave more powerful?
powerful.
In the beginning, or means in yourself.
In ourselves first.
Exactly. Everything comes to ourselves. If it's starting with ourselves, it will stay within ourselves. There's another that we mentioned that is a little bit more passive, or the mask ego, where it's a disguised pride. I forgive him because he or she doesn't deserve that I'm resentful. Or, oh, I really deserve it that he or she did that to me. Or he did this to me because he's a poor guy. And then you start putting yourself in a better position, right? I am better than that person that did that to me. And then you think that you are better and you think you are forgiving, but actually the root cause inside of you, that feeling is still there. Again, the existential void. But what we are invited to do is to be proactive. It's to be humble. I am aware that what he or she has done to me has uncovered my hurt pattern. But I'm able to free myself from resentment through forgiveness. The limitations that I have generated hurt and resentment, but I can turn them into opportunities for me for inner growth. Let's take a lesson of that happens. Let's self-acceptance that I do have some moments that I'm not doing the right thing. That's normal. I don't need to push away. I need to recognize them and take them as a lesson. Oh, look at this, Luis or anyone else. That triggers something that are not good. And Lacordaire mentioned that when someone does something against us, it seems that that person created something on us. No one else can create anything on us. We are the only one able to create something on us, right? It's just, that's why I kind of change it. When something happened, it's just uncover something that maybe it's a little bit hidden there, that I am being invited to change.
It's just, I think this is the stage of evolution because we have to detach ourselves of the situation and then think differently, right?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, it's not
Yeah.
It's a work.
And it doesn't happen tomorrow or this weekend or next week. It is a process that sometimes we will be able to deal right away.
Words hurt.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes we'll be able to do right away. Sometimes we'll be able just to reflect into a behavior that was not done. But sometimes, as we evolve, we might be even prepared to deal even before, right? We know that we might enter into a conflict or something that might not be good, and you are already prepared to do that. But that takes practice, but that takes decision to do that and to change. And then we have the true self-forgiveness and forgiveness to others, which will contribute to our existential meaning. That's it. Thank you very much. They're going to check if the kids have something. Okay. No? We do the final prayer now, right? And then, okay. All right. So once again, let's take a deep breath. Let's concentrate our thoughts, our feelings, our mind, our heart into our Father God, into Jesus, our Master. And once again, be thankful, be grateful to one more time that we are here gathered as a community, to one more time that we are here to listen to some of the teachings that we are invited to apply according to our possibility, according to our knowledge into our own lives. Let's ask that the spirituality can be with us in this beginning of this week, that the spirituality can keep guiding us, encouraging us, and helping us in our journey in search for the relative happiness. One more time, thankful for this place, for this house, and for all the light that from here is shine into our hearts and in the hearts of those who come and join us. So be it.